We are live. Welcome to my thoughts on Arrow Season 1, Episode 1 Pilot. This episode is rated TV PG somehow. There will be spoilers for the episode, not for anything else. And yeah, holy crap, this was absolutely amazing. Okay, so yeah, let's briefly get a couple of things out of the way. Yes, I am doing not just Arrow, but the entire Arrowverse. I know I took my sweet time getting here. Been meaning to get to this show for, 13 years. Heard a lot of really positive things over the years. Really glad to finally be doing it. Part of the reason I'm doing it now, and I, again, apologize that it took me so long since he first requested it, but this was a request by Arts Cafe, so one man deserves the credit. There's a lot to get into here. I might talk fast, and yeah, because we're going to be here all day if I don't. Feel free to slow me back down in the, yeah. Okay, so really loved the use of flashbacks. I wouldn't have minded personally, but I think a lot of people would have been put off if this entire first episode was just the yacht accident and him surviving on the island for 5 years and then escaping. It's important backstory. So, like, if they didn't have the flashbacks, the episode would not completely work. It's fundamental. It's extremely important to have it in there. But by having it as flashbacks, it means that the pilot can set up all this stuff that you just can't if it's all on the island, And yeah, I really appreciate that. When this came out, some comic book adaptations were like kind of wishy-washy about this whole thing of, do we say the name, do we show the costume, how much power use is like, can people take it seriously, kind of thing. So really love that we have him in a facsimile version of the full costume and using a trick arrow within like 2 minutes. Really, yeah, uses a fire arrow to light a to great effect. Took me back to playing Thief. Love that. Yeah, I really appreciate how much this episode hits the ground running, and I'm not just talking about the awesome parkour that we open on, but just generally, yeah, it really does not at all let up. Like, we're constantly meeting new characters, being introduced to new relationships, getting backstory, and the amount of action is also appropriate. Like, it's not so much that because it also has a lot of story and character to get to. Yeah, the I think, let's see, what's a good place to yeah, I really appreciated. So among the people we meet, is Colin Salmon, named after my favorite, fish to eat. And yeah, you have the thing about the tension around, was it disrespectful to his father that Walter, married his mother, which, like, it's 5 years, they assumed he was dead, and it's now been confirmed he is dead, but yeah, this thing of Oliver is like, oh right, Walter, but with, ah okay, I'm gonna try to get these names right. Reza, it's like, oh, I'm so happy to see you again. Wonderful little thing. Yeah. And yeah, he's like, Walter, and I'm like, dude, this guy went toe to toe with the Punisher. Show some respect. He's a big fan of Cubism. But yeah, I thought this did a fantastic job. Like, there's such a great storytelling engine with the Book of Names. Yeah, like, they can do a lot with that. Him just cleaning up, and the yeah. I thought that let's see, yeah, the bit where he meets Dig, and like, okay, listen, buddy, you and I, this is gonna work out, okay? Because I'm gonna protect you so freaking well, you're not even gonna mind that I'm babysitting you, okay? Do we agree? And then he turns around, it's like, car doors open, Oliver's nowhere to be seen. I think that's a no. I love how much of a freaking ninja he is in this. Just, yeah. Um, yeah, I thought that it was very smart. This episode first aired in 2012. They knew you gotta work if you're gonna get like a mainstream audience on board with a protagonist who's rich and privileged, because like when some of these characters, when they were first created, it was like, well, yeah, rich people, that's something everyone looks up to. Every American wants to become rich themselves. By 2012, yeah, there's a lot, I mean, let's see, 2012. I'm sometimes really bad at remembering years, but was that yeah, because that was after or during like Occupy Wall Street, so like you got to be careful that audiences are not like, oh, this, another rich jerk, and I thought they did a fantastic job. Just, I already mentioned, he's like, Reza, oh, I'm so happy to see you again, and she brings in stuff, and like he takes the thing from her and puts it down. Like, there's no sense of like, no, you put it down. That's what you're being paid to. Like, he respects her as a person. He doesn't treat her like she's beneath him. Right. I did just briefly want to note. So Green Arrow is actually one of my. I don't know why why it's just called Arrow instead of Green Arrow. Were they worried that people would be like, oh, he's like a vegan or something? But yeah, Green Arrow is probably my all-time favorite, not just DC, but comic book character that I've read a super huge amount of comics about. Like, the one thing that where I read it and I was like, holy crap. I'm not the biggest fan of The Dark Knight Returns, but I did really love Oliver Queen's part. I've read dozens, at least 100, of comic books, and of all the standout moments to ever stand out, his bit in that comic, like, holy crap, that was like, okay, I gotta read more about this guy, and yeah, unfortunately they did it. It's this weird thing where here in Denmark, it's not always as easy to get your hands on the comics that you might want. They would kind of, they can't translate all of the American comics, so they kind of pick and choose. And for some reason, they didn't pick that many that where he plays like a major role. Even just JLA in general, haven't read that much, and it's, yeah. I wish I had. I have read a bunch of solo of like Superman and Batman. Those are obviously pretty popular. Anyway, but yeah, they do a lot to clarify. No, he's not that kind of rich guy. Let's see. Let's see. There's definitely some other things that I really wanted to get into. Yeah, I like the way that they kind of play with the Playboy thing. So we got Tommy. He basically, essentially everyone thinks that, well, okay, not everybody thinks, but a lot of people, wonder. It's a question, like, we know the answer from the moment that, like, from immediately. But a lot of people are wondering, did the island change him, or is he still, and we do see he was kind of a jerk back then, and he's confronted with that throughout the episode, which I thought they did a really good job on. But yeah, Tommy, he definitely thinks that and he's like, glad about it. Some of the other characters are like, please tell me the island changed you. And yeah, we see some of the darker sides of that. So Tommy's like, did you ever notice your sister's hot? Which, like, okay, she's 17. That's her brother. Like, but that's, like, if you see women primarily as sex objects, yeah, this is actually, there, in real life, there have been people where, you know, it can end a friendship if the person, if one of the, sexists starts dating the sister of the other one, or, or just expressing, I think she's attractive, that sort of thing. So let's see. I think it does a good job also of, another thing is, he's white. Careful that he's not like, the white guy who comes along and just makes everything better. And it's very clear he has a lot of respect for non-white cultures. There's the Buddhist thing. He gives the rock, which, like, hey, I'm always down for seeing Dwayne Johnson appear in stuff. I really, yeah, one of the big things of this thing, rich jerk kind of, pitfall that they're very deftly avoiding here is, yeah, he knows they screwed up. His father, it was primarily his father. His father was the one who owned it. And his father says, I failed our city, but you can fix it. You can live, you can go back, and you can make everything better. And that's part of why this works so well, because there's so much going on, but it's sufficiently focused because at the end of the day, it is all about the redemption of the Queen. Primarily Oliver, but also somewhat Robert. I guess the Queens. That was one thing. Apparently the yacht was called the Queen's Gambit. Now I really want to watch that Anya Taylor-Joy thing. I'm probably going to watch some other Anya Taylor-Joy thing before I get around to that, since I don't have Netflix. But yeah. Anyway, so another thing is the I think this is a good time to talk about. So this was a CW show, and the CW has a reputation that is not necessarily the best. Let's see. I think it was Obscure as Lupa, who, I don't know if she coined the term, but she said CW shows are often pretty people problems. And that's something, I do want to acknowledge, the characters in this episode are like, it's central casting. It's, nearly everyone is remarkably conventionally attractive. Like, I guess essentially Adam Hunt is the only exception, and he's like the antagonist of the episode, like the main antagonist of the episode. People keep talking about how bad he is, so, that's classic Hollywood casting, make the villain conventionally unattractive, so we dislike him the moment we see him. Other than, like, the new chief of security, it didn't particularly, like, at that point I was like, okay, would someone with that job really be that conventionally attractive? But yeah, I'm sorry, he looks like a supermodel to me, but yeah. I do think that it does avoid it. Avoid being defined by that. Because again, other than them being conventionally attractive, the camera also makes sure you realize they're conventionally attractive. There's nobody looks stressed or tired or, kind of just, yeah. Even in situations where you might think. But the emotional core is very effective. You really do find yourself caring about, like, I so badly wanted, even if I hadn't decided I was gonna watch, even I hadn't made like a Ryan George character and decided to already watch the entire show, yeah, this pilot would have me hooked, and I've heard other people say that. I remember people saying that 13 years ago, I really, really want to see Oliver make things right, protect his city. And I love that we see, like, after he ninjas out of the car from Dig, he walks right past, he walks into this bad neighborhood, he walks right past, like homeless people. He doesn't see himself as above them. He sees himself as someone who can help them. And again, getting away from this thing of like, billionaire jerk. Um, yeah, I thought they did a good job of. I will admit, there at the very start there were a couple of characters where I didn't fully realize how they related to, but by the end of the episode, I feel confident that I know who everyone is, related to. Like, yeah, at first I wasn't sure why the cop was so hard on Oliver, because it's like, I mean, okay, he was kidnapped and then saved, and he just got back from, 5 years of, you know, Robinson Crusoe. Why are you being so intense? But it's because his daughter died on the boat, So, yeah, that was also, yeah. I'm gonna try not to think too much about how that's going to play out. But yeah, the moment that the name Dinah Lance was mentioned, and this thing of like you're always trying to save the world. Yeah, I've read enough of the comics to know there's a character in there called Dinah Lance. I swear I'm gonna try not to like constantly be expecting that turn, but yeah, they did a good job of planting that. Yeah, I guess how subtle it is depends on whether or not you've read the comics. I guess if you've not read the comics, it is just like, that's an interesting way to phrase that. Yeah, I think that might more or less cover the whole rich people thing. I love that his lair, like they accomplish so much. Like by the end of the episode, he has his lair. He is, I guess, his own guy in the chair. He's got the computers running. He's got the list of targets and all this stuff, And yeah, he built it in his father's disused factory. The what did it say? Like there's something about like steel and welding. I gotta say, I always tear up at weldings, especially if I'm not properly wearing the mask. But yeah, he's trying to turn it around. He's layer gentrifying the factory, and I mean technically it is sort of his property, I guess. Um, I thought they did a really great job on making Adam just utterly despicable. Like from the first thing, and that was also such a great way to introduce. I'm sorry, I forget the name. Lauren, right? You know, Lauren is like, we got to be able to stop this guy who's stolen all this money, from poor people. And it's mentioned. Well, we're gonna have a difficult. He might bankrupt us. So it is this thing. Like, and she's like, we got to fight for it because it's right. Love that idealism. That is something I really appreciate about DC. There's a lot of idealism. Not in every single character. Some of them are gritty anti-heroes, but yeah, it's also something you see in Superman. But yeah, the first thing we hear about Adam, he's a jerk. He stole from poor people. Then we see his name on the list, and I think that's a list Ollie's checking twice, and I don't think very many of them turn out to be nice. And yeah, then we see him, and he's like, "Well, I put that guy in office. I can take that judge right out of office. Why are you still here? Make the problem of Laurel go away." And it's like, I have a bad feeling about what he thinks is going to happen to Lauren. So yeah, and I think that might just about, okay, so there's definitely going to talk about the action scenes. I think I might have more or less covered the character stuff. There's a little bit more. I guess I'll talk briefly about, so, right, one thing I definitely do want to say. So, I want to definitely acknowledge, Green Arrow was introduced in DC before Hawkeye was in Marvel. So far, I am more into into Oliver than Clint. I have a strong fondness for Jeremy Renner, and I actually don't know the actor who plays Ollie here from anything else at all. So that is very impressive. But the episode did a fantastic job. But that's, it's not news that the MCU really didn't do enough with Clint up to this point. I guess it's not impossible they'll be able to do something, but they've had so many years of that character, and yeah. And it took a long time for them to give him an actual show, and then it was only 6 episodes. So far, I'm definitely more fond of this episode than that show's pilot, and I have strong hopes that I sincerely believe this show is going to keep topping. It's not quite fair to compare this pilot to like later episodes of that show, obviously, but yeah, I'll probably be comparing later episodes of this show to later episodes of that show, and I'm not gonna be spoiling. Or I suppose if I decide to spoil, I will warn verbally before I do so, and hold up an index finger until I'm done with the spoiler, like I used to. But let's see. Yeah, just really emotionally engaging, and I do think there was some of that in the Hawkeye pilot as well. But yeah. Let's see. I think, does that more or less get us to the right? Yeah. So one reason that I was really excited to get into the Arrowverse, and I'm glad I've been able to start. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It bears repeating. It lions repeating. A lot of these stories are better told as shows instead of movies. It works like in the comics, like it's somewhat rare for there to be an equivalent of like something that fits in a 2-hour movie without you having to have read other stuff that like leads directly into and stuff, so it works really well when they do these shows. That's also something I thought worked for some of the MCU and adjacent shows pre-Disney Plus. I do think a lot of the Disney Plus shows for the MCU have some strengths. I'm really glad to be watching a show that, like, because this is like a a traditional TV, network television show with like 23 episodes seasons. I gotta say, sometimes when I watch shorter seasons, I miss shows this long. This is the kind of thing that I grew up on shows this long. Right, I guess I'll briefly say, if I recall correctly, Charmed is also a CW show. I think that might be the only other CW show that I've... Oh, wait, it's Smallville? I've watched some of Smallville. I'm afraid I do not remember how much... Maybe the first 3 seasons of Smallville? So yeah. So far, I do like this better than both of those shows. Yeah, so this was back when there was still a lot of like Batman Begins going on with like Marvel. You had like Iron Man 1 is Iron Man Begins, the Amazing Spider-Man 1 is Spider-Man Begins, and yeah, there's some Batman Begins going on here, complete with like the flashbacks and such, which it wasn't always the case with the ones that felt like Batman Begins, but like I said, I think it works really well. It's not like it's not a criticism of this to compare it to Batman Begins. But yeah, you see him make the decision. He sets up equipment and a layer and all this stuff. I love the green lighting of the layer and when he's making the arrow, and that ridiculous thing where he's like using his arms to he's like lifting the bar and then using it to climb. Holy crap. See, that's the thing. There's definitely some like eye candy going on, but I do appreciate that. I feel like most of it was, of Ollie. So, not like ogling women. And in part it is, some of it is like, well, we're also seeing his scars, that is, and yeah, I think it's great for women and non-straight men to also get some eye candy. There's been so much for us straight men. And let's see, yeah, I'm jealous. I would love to have a physique like that. Holy crap. But then, you hear about the kind of stuff they have to go through to get and maintain a physique like that, and I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with, yeah. Uh, let's see but yeah, another thing with the Batman Begins, having to pretend, yeah, Lauren is like, I have to save the world. You're too busy swimming. And we have the thing of the classic, I know it primarily from like Spider-Man, but this thing of like the two worlds colliding, of the trying to have a personal life and also having to do superhero stuff, where is like, the timer goes off, it's 10 p.m. and he's like, they didn't do what I asked. And so he knows, like, if he says, I have to go, she's going to wonder what's going on. So he says, I have 5 years of debauchery to catch up on. The island didn't change me. If we get back together, I'm going to hurt you again, but worse, And he feels like he has to. He can't really... Yeah. If he lets her get close, she might discover it. She's smart. She like, law school, like, holy crap, And she's, yeah, she's helping decide what cases they may, is she in charge of the play? I'm not 100% sure exactly how much power she has, but it's not none. At the practice, it might be her practice. And if she keeps that up, she'll get good. But yeah. And then she says, the island did change you. At least now you're honest. I just, oh no. And I can't help but wonder if they're trying to set up a love triangle with Tommy, because he hits on her and she's like, well, yeah, we were together sometimes, but you're not monogamous and I need monogamy, which, love that. I really love when women and minorities in general are able to like set healthy boundaries, because it's true. Like, to be sure, monogamy isn't for everyone, but when you start a romantic relationship with someone, it is, let's see, I'm not so up on modern dating. I've heard some say that it's not like immediately, like you can start having sex with someone before you know if you're exclusive. That's not for me to get into. I'm not judging, to be clear. But after a while, you'll want to figure out, and yeah, monogamous or not, and it's really important to set that boundary. Polyamory, from what I understand, I've never tried it myself, but from what I understand, basically only hurts if the communication struggles. Otherwise, there's a lot of people who are extremely happy to be polyamorous. It's not an unhealthy lifestyle. It just requires that openness and communication and trust. And part of that communication is saying if you are not comfortable with polyamory, and some people know that right away. Some people realize after a while. But yeah, from what I've heard, if you feel like polyamory just isn't working for you, tell your partner or partners, and figure out what exactly you're going to do. But don't let it fester. That just leads to pain. So love seeing her just say no. If you're not monogamous, and he's like, maybe I could be monogamous for you. But yeah, I can't help but wonder if Ollie is going to end up trying to find a way, because he does, like, he clearly still loves her. It's just that right now he thinks that this is the way to protect her from. I do believe he meant that he's scared he'll hurt her. Though not necessarily, she thinks that he means, because he's gonna treat her badly. I think it's more this thing, like, it's that thing about, if you're a superhero, that is why Super King has no need for loved ones, Let's see. I think that pretty well covers that. So, okay, so let's see. What is left? There's the action. I definitely got a few more things to say about the flashbacks. Let's see. I think I might save the action for last. Yeah, so flashbacks. Yeah, I really appreciated the way that we did gradually get, like, we saw enough that I could buy, because, like, the parkour made me think, yeah, this guy has been able to survive for 5 years. I can believe that. He realizes there's a boat. He parkours over there, lights the signal that he had already set up, and is then rescued. He's been at this for a while. It's a very effective way to show that, and it's also really tense and exciting to see him parkour. That's also something. Yeah, the parkour. Big fan of that. Was also something I really loved in the Daredevil Netflix show. And didn't necessarily think there was quite enough of for my taste. I guess I don't need to say both of those things in some of the MCU and adjacent pre-Disney Plus shows, or the Disney Plus shows for that matter. Anyway, yeah. Let's see yeah. When it cut back and we saw Sarah, it's such a great, because like you gotta, again, it's a difficult balance. Let's go with that. Because like here you have this, conventionally attractive woman in her underwear for like most of her screen time. That can easily become like really objectifying, and that's something I really appreciate. The camera doesn't really linger or ogle, linger on, the women's bodies or ogle them or such. An argument could be made that it's a little bit ogling, Ollie, and I don't know if he needs to be, topless for each of this. Let's see, he's topless at least twice in just this one episode. But again, I'm not complaining. It's if they're gonna do it, I think it should be with the man. That was also I quite like when they're like, oh, he's got all these scars and such. It's like, really badass, but also gets across, because he's up and moving like that, but also gets across, yeah, he really suffered. He changed. It took a lot, but he was forged in fire. He is ready, and when Lauren said, you deserved more than 5 years of hell, holy crap. And she does afterwards apologize, and I really thought they did a great job on that, because, yeah, like, at the time, she really needed to say that, but it's also like, yeah, Tommy trying to do. I do appreciate he's not one note. He's not expecting them to actually get into bed together. He just wants them to, part on better terms if they really are. If this is the time for parting, But yeah. Yeah, at first she really needed to say that, and then she apologizes and asks, did she suffer? And it's, he knows she needs closure, so he says no, she didn't. And we get the flashback again, but yeah. And there's also the dancing girls at the party, but again, the camera just acknowledges, yeah, there's dancing girls, because this is how Tommy sets up a party for Ollie. This is what he thinks Ollie wants, because as far as I could tell, the only thing Ollie was in charge of was making sure it was right next door to Adam, and that was also great. Tommy's like, you're not a superhero, are you? He's like, very, very close to figuring it out. Ollie's basically like, maybe you should just be grateful that you're alive. Like, maybe don't tell anyone, bro code and everything. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, the fact that Sarah is, in underwear for basically all of screen time in this episode, it makes clear that is the relationship that because it's one thing that he was with Sarah on the yacht when she died and all these other people died, but clarifying, yes, it was sexual. He cheated on Lauren for sex with her own sister, But then we also see, like, he clearly is in pain when she dies, and yeah, he does want to make up for that. He does blame himself for that. She kept saying that was dangerous, and he's like, no, let's just have sex. So it was in part his fault. So the fact that this is such a sexual relationship is important to the characterization of the relationship, and yeah, she deserved better, and it makes it clear, she's not a sex object. He treated her as one, and he shouldn't have, and now she's dead. I really appreciate the way they confront, because also, he comes back, and his sister is doing drugs, and she's like, how dare you judge me? You were my role model. I am a mirror of you. This is what you made me. And he can't pretend, he knows she's right. He doesn't even argue. He does make sure to grab the drugs and then throw it in the garbage. And I like the little bit where, Dig, like, notices, and he's like, yeah, you're right. That's good. Because, like, they didn't necessarily get off on the best foot, in part because Ollie's foot was out the door. So yeah, it's great that there's a little bit, and that is also, like, I mean, is he gonna remember? Did it happen so fast that he not realize that he was being knocked out by Ollie specifically? Could Ollie, like, say, oh, we were both attacked and I had to run or something? But yeah, let's see. I think does that more or less. Right. So yeah, flashbacks. Yeah, I felt like it was only when she died that Ollie realized he does love Sarah and he doesn't want her hurt. But he's just so used to, that is a big problem for the rich. They don't think there will be consequences, and eventually there are, and some of them change for the better. A lot of them sadly don't. Let's see. I mean, right now we're seeing maybe Donald Trump will face consequences for the first time in his entire life. And I guess we'll see if he'll change for the better. I don't think the odds are ever in favor of that, but, we'll see. I think that does... Oh, wait, yeah. There's a little bit more with the flashbacks, so let's see. Yeah, just it was really intense when the boat, like, actually goes, like, holy crap. That was really great stunt work also. But yeah, he ends up in the boat, and they're like, or the saving. I don't remember what they're called. The little thing that he ends up in, and yeah, his father's like, she's gone, MacReady. And it is, yeah, he can't. It's extremely difficult under those circumstances to save the other person. But Ollie knows, like, he's smart enough to know. Drowning, it's not like going home, it's agony, so yeah. And I also appreciate, because they could have had it be like, oh, she when the boat fell over, she, like, hit her head and either passed out so she didn't realize she was drowning, or maybe died from, but no, she screamed and she fell into the water and he couldn't, yeah, I mean, especially in cold water. It's one of the worst ways to die, they say. Yeah, I Ollie feels a great sense of guilt, and an argument could be made that he should over her, and now he has to make it right. He even says, and again, I believe him. He says that if he could trade places with her, he would. Yeah. Let's see. The thing with, Ollie gets a lot of the water, and the other guy's like, we barely, that's all we have. And yeah, Robert is like, he has to live, and he even, yeah, he kills the other guy, and then he says, you have to make it right, and then he shoots himself, and it is this thing of, like, a very extreme case of this, like, sometimes parents can be extreme, can be very self-sacrificing, and yeah, just, yeah, so he has a lot to make, he has to do right by Sarah and Robert, and yeah, I really appreciate them, the people working on this saving that for last. That was one of the last things we see, is that's as far as it actually went. That's why Robert, he didn't drown, he took himself out so that Ollie might live, and just, yeah. Right, also really love that at the start of the episode, before he comes back and then shaves, Ollie has facial hair very reminiscent of at least some versions of Green Arrow from the comics. So yeah, I don't know if they're gonna go with if they're gonna let him actually grow it out. But yeah, I thought that really worked well there. Um, I like that they acknowledge that, oh, so we're doing Robin Hood. Like the cop says it as a joke, because it is like, yeah, that's kind of that's what is being set up here. He's doing a Robin Hood. And I'm here for it. And that again is a great way to get us on the side of this, rich guy who used to be a jerk. Let him actually do something so selfless. Something that really helps people. And that's also something I really appreciate here. He doesn't win the day by beating up a mugger. He returns money that a rich guy stole from poor people. That is a much bigger way to make the world a better place. Like, obviously, we all hate muggers, but a lot of, crimes on that level are by people who feel like they don't have any other way. They're desperate. And part of that is because capitalism has redistributed the wealth to the top 1%, and they're sitting and trying to figure out how to brag about it and buying car elevators and super yachts whilst people starve to death in the streets. So, yeah, I really appreciate this acknowledging that. Going by Batman rules, since some of his loved ones died in a yacht accident, I guess Ollie is going to make it his mission in life to prevent yacht accidents. But yeah, let's see. Right, I also appreciated the bit where he screamed, "I am not dying sober." And I think that covers the flashbacks. So the action, like, holy crap, amazing. Like, I had heard, I'd seen some clips from this pilot. I knew it was going to be good. I was still wowed by it. Like, the way they filmed and edited and choreographed the opening parkour was spectacular. And let's see, I think I already mentioned that I thought there was enough and not too much. And it was also, like, frequent enough. It was spread out well. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I like the kidnapping. It was very, you think I'm locked in here with you? You're locked in here with me. I don't know. And I don't think I want to know how he got out of his wrists being tied with strip ties, I think they're called. It's just like you're tied to a chair. And I did wonder if he was going to be like, and since my lighter isn't working, I'm going to beat you guys up still tied to this chair. But no, he's just like, it's like, sure. I mean, it's comic book media. Pretty much anything can happen. He does ninja stuff. I'm here for it. I have no issue with it whatsoever. But yeah, also them, like, torturing. Appreciate that it's the bad guys doing torturing of one of the good guys. And the fact that they end up not getting information. Very accurate to real life. It is genuinely an evil thing to do, to torture, and even people who work in the field of getting credible intelligence have said torture does not get credible intelligence. Guarantee it, at least. And, if you get a lot of stuff that isn't, true, and then you get some that is true, like, yeah, just go with there are other methods. I forget, I don't remember them right now, but you can look them up if you really want to. Yeah, no pressure either way. There are other ways that are more dependable for getting workable, credible intel. But yeah, the thing about, did your father tell you? Yes. What did he tell you? That I'm gonna kill you. Because I was sitting there thinking, this is time for a one-liner, isn't it? And this is such an awesome, just, yeah. And I don't know exactly how. So apparently he caught a bullet there near the end, and he also manages to avoid being hit by the automatic gunfire there as he's taking out the kidnappers and such. I don't know how, but, I'm here for it. And the parkouring after the one guy, and the thing about, he straight up kills the guy because no one can know. So I also appreciated that, and that he didn't actually kill. Like, we're at first I wasn't entirely sure, but Adam says he put several of my guys in the hospital. He didn't say any of them in the morgue, which, I mean, you would at this point have to put some of his guys in the morgue. That's the Chicago way. But yeah, um, really cool way for him to take out the kidnappers, and really surprising that at the end with like, should we send more kidnappers? No, there are other ways of finding out what my son knows. I'm like, wow, did not see that coming. That is, yeah, this family has secrets. Let's see, I think, right, it was really sweet when he hugged his sister after 5 years, and then not long after we find out she's doing drugs, and she has a connection for drugs. Like, it's not a one-time thing or anything. Just, yeah, they do a really good job of like making us care about these characters. Also, we meet Lauren, and it's like, yeah, she's a fighter for justice, and then she's like sad about her sister dying. Just really nicely done there. Let's see. I think that might. Yeah, and she turns off the TV as they're all watching. Where's Sarah Connor to yell, "Don't you touch that," where you need her. But yeah. Let's see. Then we have, yeah. I really loved him going up to Adam, and which again, like, this is the first time we're hearing Adam speak and seeing him in action, and immediately he's saying stuff that makes us just hate his guts, and we cannot wait for him to get justice. And then, yeah, several arrows fired, and I loved how some of that was also very Batman Begins with, we're seeing him inside the car, and it's like, what's happening? We're just hearing, which, because there's enough other fighting, that is one thing where this tops Batman Begins. Batman Begins, yeah, some of the time there's a decent amount of fighting, but the way it's choreographed and filmed and edited, it doesn't work that well. He got a lot better. It's the only Nolan movie where I felt like, okay, this is just kind of badly done action for what it is. Some of the others have so little action that is, and they're not really supposed to be action movies anyway. But there's so much action in the rest of the episode that we didn't need to see him beating up, but we do need to see the effect it has. We need to see him making, these rich jerks quake in their boots, and be like, holy crap, this guy. Because that's the thing. I can imagine that over the course of this, because now, word's going to spread, oh, there's, this guy, I don't know if they're going to start calling him Arrow, or they're going to give him some other nickname or what, but Arrow is out there. He's going after rich people. I can see some rich people might, try to react in some way. This is something you can really work with. There's a lot of places that this can go, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they choose. Deathstroke's mask with the arrow through at the beginning. I guess it's not technically his mask, but it's very similar. I'm here for this. Oh my, holy crap. Yeah, another one of my favorite characters. So yeah, that's, yeah. Oh boy. Anyway, yes, and I swear I'm not gonna obsess over when does he, or if he even shows up. I swear. I promise. Let's see. I think that pretty well gets us to the, yeah, the thing about, there's good, you're going to move, all this money to this account before 10 p.m. or I'll be back, and he shoots the car window and the whole thing, and yeah, we see he didn't, right, I was also, it worked well in Batman Begins, but here it was genuinely like so devastating, like every single second of Ollie, because we feel so strongly that he hates this. He doesn't want to be this way anymore. This isn't him anymore, but he has to put up a front, because if everybody sees that he's like withdrawn and he keeps disappearing from places, he's not the person he used to be, and the moment that he turned up back in the city, this other guy showed up as well. Like, he needs to maintain a cover, so. But yeah, him pretending to party, it was just like, ugh. And the moment that he enters the party, we feel it's like he doesn't want to be there, which again, helps counteract, because like we don't want to just watch people party and nothing really happen. We don't just want to watch pretty people do nothing and look pretty and do as little as possible. But yeah, it has that effect, and I love when you can do that. It's difficult to do because, like, by its nature, a party is gonna look appealing to a lot of people, but they do a really good job of making it clear he doesn't want to be here. He's there because it's close to Adam, and Tommy would not stop talking if he didn't throw this party. And it is also, yeah, if he can disappear for just a few minutes without people noticing and then return to the party, then that is a cover. Like, he's like, what, I've been here the whole time. It's a big party, someone must have seen me. I don't know, maybe they're too drunk to remember, but that works, as opposed to if people expected him to just be at home but there are no witnesses, kind of thing. But I mean, plenty of people can attest to he was here 5 seconds ago. I swear, I don't know where he went, but he was drinking and partying, and there was music, and everyone was having fun. Why are you bugging us, Mr. Police Officer? That was also great. Like, that was very realistic. That, the cops come in, okay, party's over, and they're, like, being booed. Like, just, yeah. Even when, like, yeah. ACAB all the way. But the, yeah. Then we have the, what's the other thing? I guess that gets us to the big climactic, yeah, him, making his way into the, and the thing about, okay, so the cops are going to be watching, and, the building, there's tons of security in there, and then we just see the arrow that he can slide on, yeah, the arrow embedding itself in the wall, and we know he's going to slide down, and later we do see him, yeah, use the rope and the like zip line down, and yeah, I think so yeah, there's some Batman Begins, but I gotta say, it especially made me think of, like, he's like making, like, Leon the Professional, with significantly less, like, uncomfortable. There's really just Tommy saying, oh, this 17-year-old girl is hot. Other than that, no, none of that crap that, yeah. Listen, I have great fondness for a lot of French filmmakers and their movies. Sometimes I really wish that they would, well, more than sometimes, all of the time, I really wish that they would get over this thing of, like, showing sexualized underage girls. That's just such a messed up thing that yeah. Anyway, honestly, I probably will at some point make a video on Leon the Professional. Drop a comment if you'd like me to, like, make it soon. I have it on DVD. Have had it on DVD for some years. But yeah, that was, like, all that's really missing is, like, the one of the guys, says, somebody's coming, somebody's serious. But yeah, all the, you've got the arrows, and you hear screaming from the other room, and then, like, the bit where, like, someone goes flying through this glass door, and of course, like, their first reaction is, that must be the guy, so they just opened fire. That was also, I really appreciate his willingness to use human shields, because he does it several times, without, like, really stopping it. They made him sufficiently edgy, and like, I get the feeling he wouldn't do it to someone who's, like, innocent, who's basically just caught up in something they wouldn't, if his sister wasn't his sister, if there was someone equivalent to that, he would not use her as a human shield, but yeah, these guys who draw weapons when they're told, their rich thieving boss, is being, like, extorted. Like, they don't even, like, the reason that Arrow is even coming in, arrows blazing, is that he refused to pay. He stole money and he's refusing to pay it back. I'm sorry, if you draw a gun on someone who's trying to make sure that money comes, I mean, to be clear, in real life, I think violence should always be the absolute last resort. Try to make sure you've tried absolutely everything else before that. But yeah, these are not particular. These are people who are choosing evil. They're choosing to protect someone evil with violence, and yeah, hoisted by his own petard. That the guy who got thrown through, because he was there. He was ready to shoot this. He was ready to take out Robin Hood. Let's see, but yeah, really really cool fight. Helped make up for him looking like a supermodel between Ollie and the other guy. And I also really appreciate that because I felt like throughout the episode they did a good job of making it clear. Yeah, he's not like sleepwalking through this. It's not necessarily he's incredible at what he does, possibly even the best at what he does. But he is not just like, because it would just be boring. It can be cool to watch, but it's not as engaging. It's not as exciting. And every single time there's an action scene in this, there's some struggle, there's some, worry. Like, they're at the very start. Like, we only kind of really realize it in retrospect, but, or I did, at least. If he hadn't gotten there in time, the boat might have passed. Who knows when the next boat that could rescue him, So every single action scene, there's some, with the kidnappers, yeah, he manages to get out of the strip ties. Zip ties, I think they're whatever. But yeah, him using the chair, like he breaks off a leg and stabs a guy with the wooden. Holy crap! Just yeah. Let's see. Then we have, but yeah, really great fight against the security chief of security guy, and let's see. Then we have the what was the other thing? Right, I like the thing with the arrow. You missed. Did I? It's just, and later we see, how could the money just disappear? What do you mean there's no trace? Because, he's rich, so he has access to this kind of technology that could, without a trace move the way. And the thing with, so I'm glad you got all that money. I don't think you should tell anyone. As your lawyer in this matter, I advise you to keep that to yourself, Let's see. I think that might just about cover. I feel like there's one more thing that I really wanted to say. I don't know. It's possible I'll remember for the next episode. Hold up. The oh wow, I'm drawing a blank. Holy crap. It was right there. I swear, I'll remember or I'll course correct. Let's see. Yeah, I think they've done a good job of using the trick arrows. You've got the flame for the start. You've got the little wonderfully, like, how does that work? So like the arrow that transfers the money. I love comic books. I love comic book media. Let's see, because like at the end of the day, you know what? It's what we want to happen. We want these rich jerks to have to pay back the money that they've stolen. And you don't get rich without exploiting people or inheriting from people who exploited. I think that oh right, I like the bit with a couple of things he missed. First black president, that was cool. Which I also, yeah, by 2012 it was like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like there were years there. I remember, we were like, holy crap, black president, this is gonna fix everything, and then it's like, oh right, because he's a regular Democrat. We really need someone way more progressive, and he did claim to be progressive. Like, don't get me wrong, I am thrilled that America has finally had a black president. I hope one day it will again. I honestly hope just one day it'll be someone other than Donald Trump, because clearly he's hoping that won't be the case. But yeah, by 2012 we had kind of realized, that the sheen had worn off a little bit. But yeah, I do think it's extremely telling that, he's sandwiched in between, two of the worst presidents, both of whom were white Republicans where, like, how does anyone vote for these guys? Like, they're so clearly unqualified. Like, even if you love what they say and their personality and what they say they're gonna do, like, don't you want someone who's significantly more competent? Like, really, really? And Republicans keep saying no. They like the, you know, Trump was not the only person in the, you know, there were a bunch of, wasn't there over a dozen different Republican candidates? Trump was the last one standing, you know, the others, like, not all of the others were completely hopeless cases as far as being qualified go. I think that might more or less cover. Holy crap, this went on. I've been talking for longer than I thought I was gonna. But yeah, there's just so much to unpack here. I think that does pretty well cover everything. Except, holy crap, I'm glad that I kept going for a little longer. So, the MCU did somewhat get into. Oh, right, actually, no, yeah, because this is 2012. Yeah, not very long after this episode first aired, the MCU did also touch upon PTSD with panic attacks and such. This did it better and sooner, and yeah, like, holy crap, he actually, like, he falls asleep with, you know, open windows, so there's rain on him. He's having PTSD flashbacks to his trauma. You know, we're actually seeing him re-experience, you know, some of these horrible 5 years, you know. And when his mother tries to wake him up so he can feel safe again, he reacts using the kind of thing that, you know, yeah, like, he has probably had to, undoubtedly, he's had to defend himself. You know, I don't know if it's necessarily been against human beings. It might have been against animals, but yeah, you know, and so he's ready. You know, his body, his entire body is one big weapon, and now he's, like, grabbing his mother by the, you know, or holding his hand against her throat, you know, and he immediately apologizes, and she does understand where he's coming from. But that is horrifying, you know, and that is something that actually, like, so many combat veterans have had an extremely similar experience to that. It's so important to actually depict that, because there's way too many people who just don't think about how that, you know, like, I'm not saying that no war has to be fought. I do think most of the recent wars America has been involved in have been unnecessary, but, you know, waged for profit or influence and such. Here's hoping that Trump has gotten it out of his system. I'm not qualified to talk about, you know, some people are saying World War III. The Cavernacle has done at least 2 videos on that are really, really excellent. Yeah, I think that does cover. But yeah, I really greatly appreciate, you know, actually depicting such an honest and truthful depiction of PTSD that can maybe help a lot of people realize, you know, this is what happens when, you know, for example, combat. And there's other ways to get PTSD, and, you know, I mean, I guess by now it's been months, but there was, you know, there was that person who was going through a lot and basically had a mental health episode, and then someone else decided that they should kill this person, even as others there protested. And Republicans said, oh, the guy who killed the guy having a mental health episode, he's a hero. You know, because the guy having a mental health episode, oh, he was dangerous, you know, because trauma can make you behave in ways that maybe don't warrant someone killing them. Yeah. So really appreciate that. And yeah, I don't know exactly how they managed to show that, how they managed to get away with showing that on a TV PG rating, but I'm glad they pushed for it because, yeah, um, holy crap, I love this show. I'm so glad I'm finally doing Arrowverse. Yeah. Let's see. I am gonna try to briefly think of something funny to close out on because that's what I've been doing recently. And let's see. Right, I did briefly want to note fantastic acting on the guy who plays Ollie because, like, when he's the playboy in the flashbacks, I believe it. When he's Survivor in, some of the other flashbacks, I believe it. And when he's back and he's, like, doing the hero thing, 100% believe it. Every step of the way, it just works. Like, fantastic performance. From what I think I did get to see the Green Arrow on Smallville as well. I think I watched at least one of those episodes. I did like that guy as well. I thought he was good. Oh, right. If you haven't already, read IMDb trivia for this episode. Some really interesting, great stuff. Do know I skimmed some of the ones have spoilers for upcoming episodes, but I was able to deduce before I read any spoilers. But yeah, I think that might pretty well cover. So I guess Dig was in part there because it wasn't so much that she didn't want him kidnapped again. It was that, she's worried about it because, how much does Ollie know? I think that does pretty well cover. Yeah, a lot of plot threads here that are set up very nicely that I look forward to seeing play out over the course of the show. And yeah, it's a really solid foundation. Like, there's just enough comic booky stuff that it's like, okay, this is one for, there's stuff here for fans, but they also make sure to ground it in a way that feels like, again, 2012, there was an expectation that it had to be grounded. This is before some of the more out there comic book movies. Certainly the MCU was very careful to ground everything around this time. So, that's part of what they're doing. Right. Also, someone like Green Arrow, it works really well on like the small screen. It's a little bit more difficult to make like world-ending stuff with him. I mean, I wouldn't rule out it might happen in the Arrowverse once he like meets. I'm guessing he's gonna meet a non-zero number of other heroes, and then there can be stuff. But yeah, I could see him going up against like, white collar criminals and such, slicing through their personal armies and such. I think that might cover everything. Yeah, I was pretty happy with how much, it's not 100% the comic, but, I accept that. But the costume they had him in by the end, I thought worked. Let's see. The moment that you have, like, face paint as part of a costume, again, delicate balance. You got to be careful that it doesn't end up looking, yeah. And I think they did a really good job on that. I think that actually does cover absolutely everything. Certainly been going on for a while. Let's see. Yeah. Just some really great. Right. Yeah. The when they were talking about stuff that they missed, there's the thing about, oh, it's like Twilight. Who? And then Tommy says, "Oh, you should be glad you missed it." And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I've watched 4 out of 5 of those movies. I think they're quite good so far. But there's also the thing about, Lost. Yeah, he says Lost ended because if he disappeared 2007, Lost was like 2 or 3 seasons in, something like that, and yeah, he makes a joke about not understanding the ending of Lost, which, like, yeah, by 2012, those jokes hadn't gotten old. This isn't even the only DC property from around that time that made a joke like that, But yeah, since then, I think in the 13 years since this episode aired, I think those jokes have gotten stale, and should probably try avoiding telling them. That's what I keep trying to remind myself.